In the heart of London, amidst towering skyscrapers and the endless hum of the city, lived a young man named Daniel Hayes. At just 32, he was a billionaire, a titan of industry with a portfolio of hotels, luxury cars, and sprawling companies. To the world, he was the epitome of success, the man who had it all. But in the quiet solitude of his opulent mansion, Daniel felt a profound emptiness. He had money, fame, and power, but what he truly craved, genuine love, remained elusive. Every woman who entered his life seemed more captivated by his lifestyle than by his heart. He lavished them with extravagant gifts and whisked them away on dream vacations, only to watch them disappear the moment the lavish spending paused. Daniel was weary of this transactional affection, this hollow charade of love. One particularly gloomy, rainy morning, he sat by his window, a warm cup of coffee in his hands, watching the gray, muted city. He idly flipped through the morning paper when a headline jumped out at him. "True love is priceless." He read it once, then again, a sad smile touching his lips. A question began to form in his mind, a persistent, nagging thought. "If all my money vanished," he mused, "would anyone still stay by my side?" This question echoed in the vast emptiness of his home and his heart. Hours ticked by. Finally, a resolve hardened within him. He stood up, his reflection in the rain-streaked window looking back at him. "It's time for a test," he declared to the empty room. "I have to know the truth." At the time, Daniel was casually dating 4 different women: Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe. Each one believed she held a special place in his life, that she was the one. Daniel found them all charming in their own ways, but a seed of doubt prevented him from trusting any of them completely. So he devised a plan, a simple dinner that he knew would change everything. That evening, his mansion was a vision of elegance. Golden lights cast a warm glow over the grand hall, candles flickered on every surface, and soft, classical music drifted through the air. A long, exquisitely set dining table stood ready for his guests. Olivia was the first to arrive, a striking figure in a bold red dress. Grace followed, her smile as proud and polished as her designer handbag. Then came Amelia, her laughter echoing as she burst in, a whirlwind of vibrant energy. Chloe arrived last, her phone already in hand, documenting every luxurious detail for her social media followers. Daniel played the perfect host, greeting each of them with a warm smile and a charming word. The dinner started with light chatter and polite laughter, but as the evening wore on, Daniel noticed a disquieting pattern. Their conversations revolved not around him, the man, but around his possessions, his status, his wealth. "You must be making millions from your new company," Grace commented, her eyes scanning the ornate ceiling. "This place is like a royal palace," Olivia added, running a hand over the silk tablecloth. Amelia giggled. "You're seriously the most famous man I've ever met." Chloe, looking up from her phone, whispered conspiratorially, "Your life just feels unreal, Daniel." Daniel maintained his pleasant smile, but inside, his heart felt like a lead weight. Each compliment felt like a small cut, a reminder that they saw the billionaire, not the man. When the last course was cleared, he stood up, his calm demeanor hiding the storm of emotions inside. "I have something special for all of you," he announced. He reached into his jacket and produced 4 sleek black credit cards, placing them purposefully on the center of the table. A stunned silence fell over the room. The women stared, their eyes wide with disbelief. "Each of you can take one of these cards," Daniel explained, his voice even. "Use it for the next 24 hours. Buy whatever your heart desires, anything that you think will make you happy." For a moment, no one moved. Then Olivia's face split into a dazzling smile. "Are you serious? Unlimited money?" Daniel simply nodded. "You're so incredibly generous," Grace murmured, her voice filled with awe. Amelia clapped her hands together in delight. This is the best idea ever." Chloe was already planning her spree. "I know exactly where I'm going first," she laughed. Eagerly, they each snatched a card from the table. Not one of them questioned his motive. Not one of them said, "Daniel, you don't have to do this." Their minds were already miles away, lost in dreams of designer stores and luxury boutiques. Soon they were gone, their high heels clicking a rapid, excited rhythm across the marble floor. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching their car's taillights recede into the glittering city night. The grand hall fell silent, the only sound the soft patter of the rain outside. It was then that a gentle voice broke the silence from behind him. "Would you like some tea, sir?" Daniel turned. It was Ella, his maid, a simple, polite, and kind woman. She had worked for him for years, always performing her duties with quiet dignity and respect. She was the type of person who never sought the spotlight. He managed a small nod. "Yes, thank you, Ella." She returned a few moments later with a steaming cup of Earl Grey and noticed the thoughtful, almost melancholic expression on his face. "Is something on your mind, sir?" she asked softly. A faint, tired smile touched Daniel's lips. "Just thinking about life." Ella nodded, her expression understanding. "Sometimes," she said wisely, "the people who have everything are the ones who still feel the most empty. Money can buy many things, but it can't buy peace of mind." Her simple words struck him with surprising force. He truly looked at her for the first time in a long while. She wore no fancy clothes, no makeup, no jewelry. There was a peacefulness about her, a genuine contentment that he hadn't seen in anyone else for a very, very long time. "That's very true, Ella," he said, his voice barely a whisper. She offered him a small, warm smile. "Good night, sir," she said, and then she quietly slipped away. Daniel returned to the window, watching as the rain finally stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the lights like a web of scattered diamonds. He thought of the four women, their faces bright with avarice as they clutched his credit cards. "Tomorrow," he whispered to the night, "tomorrow I will finally know who truly understands the meaning of happiness." He sipped his tea, the warmth spreading through him, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and anticipation. As the mansion settled into the deep quiet of the night, Daniel's test of love had unexpectedly begun to test his own heart. What he would discover was yet to be seen. Morning light spilled across London, painting the quiet mansion in soft hues. Inside, Daniel Hayes sat by the window, lost in thought. He pictured the four women who had walked out yesterday, each holding a card he'd given them: Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe. "Today," he whispered to the empty room, "I'll see who truly understands happiness, not just money." Olivia wandered through the bustling heart of the city, the card a heavy weight in her hand. Bright lights, hurried footsteps, the constant hum of life. She tried to find something, anything that would impress Daniel. A bouquet of rare flowers, a first-edition book, a dress from a chic boutique. But with each purchase, a hollow feeling grew. She wasn't buying things she loved. She was buying things she hoped he would love. She desperately wanted him to see the effort, not the price tag. Meanwhile, Grace found herself drawn to a small bakery by the river. The warm scent of freshly baked bread filled the air, a comforting aroma that reminded her of home. She took a seat by the window, watching children play, their laughter echoing like tiny bells. For the first time in a long, long time, a sense of peace washed over her. Later, she saw an elderly woman struggling with a heavy basket. Without a second thought, Grace rushed to help, then quietly used a small portion of the card to pay for the woman's meal. A gentle smile touched her lips. Perhaps kindness, she thought, was a far greater gift than any material object. Amelia bypassed the glitzy downtown shops entirely. She took a train back to her old neighborhood, the one she grew up in. She met her younger brother at his school gate, his face lighting up when he saw her. They shared a simple lunch, catching up on family news, and took a long walk through the park they used to frequent as kids. She used the card to buy him a stack of new books and a warm coat for the coming winter. The pure, unadulterated joy on his face was her reward. It was a stark reminder of the simple, profound love she had been missing. Chloe, on the other hand, turned her day into a creative project. She spent the morning filming short videos centered on gratitude and small acts of kindness. She documented her journey through the city, buying a flower from a street vendor only to give it to a lonely-looking passerby, leaving an anonymous, encouraging note on a park bench for a stranger to find. Online, her followers flooded her comments with thanks, telling her how her simple videos had brightened their day. For Chloe, the genuine connection she felt was a revelation. Her heart felt light, not from likes and views, but from the shared happiness she had created. Back at the mansion, Daniel remained disconnected from the world. No phone, no emails. He just sat, watching the rain streak down the window panes. He contemplated the frantic pace of modern life, the endless chase for fleeting pleasures and possessions. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Sir, would you like some tea?" It was Ella, the maid, her presence a quiet comfort. She placed a tray on the table beside him. Daniel nodded, grateful for the interruption. "Thank you, Ella. It's so quiet today, isn't it?" "Yes," she replied, her voice gentle. "Quiet days are good for the heart." He managed a small smile. "You always have such simple answers." "Simple answers often carry the most truth, sir," she said, her calm demeanor easing the tension in his shoulders. Later that evening, as the fire crackled in the hearth, Daniel reflected on the day. He wondered what the four women had discovered. Had any of them found joy beyond the glamour and the shopping sprees? His thoughts drifted to Ella, her humble work, her unwavering contentment. A realization began to dawn on him. This test wasn't just for Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe. It was for him, too. It was a lesson that love isn't proven by grand, expensive gestures, but by the accumulation of small, quiet acts of care and consideration. As the rain began to fall again, its gentle rhythm a soft drumbeat against the roof, Daniel gazed out at the twinkling city lights. Tomorrow, the women would return. Tomorrow he would learn not just what they had bought, but what they truly valued. He whispered into the stillness of the house, "Maybe true love is only found in a quiet heart." The mansion settled into silence, poised and waiting for the morning's revelations. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Daniel Hayes's mansion. The air felt fresh, and the soft chirping of birds filtered through the curtains. Daniel stood by the window, a warm cup of tea in his hands. His heart was calm, but a deep curiosity stirred within him. Today was the day. The four women would return, and he would finally see what each had chosen to do with the card he'd given them. He whispered to himself, a small smile playing on his lips, "Let's see who truly understands happiness." The first to arrive was Olivia. She swept into the grand hall, looking as bright and cheerful as ever. Daniel greeted her with a polite smile. "Good morning, Olivia. How was your day?" She beamed back at him. "It was absolutely wonderful. I bought a few things that made me think of you. Some beautiful flowers, a book I thought you'd like, and this dress for our next dinner together." Daniel nodded. "That's very thoughtful of you." But as she continued to speak, he couldn't help but notice her eyes repeatedly glancing at her own reflection in the grand mirrors lining the hall. Her words were kind, but her excitement seemed to be more about her appearance than any genuine feeling. Still, he thanked her for coming. Later that morning, Grace arrived. She carried a sense of calm and peace, a stark contrast to her usual bold and vivacious style. As she sat across from Daniel, he asked, "How did you spend your day, Grace?" She offered a soft, genuine smile. "I spent some time down by the river. I met an older woman who seemed to be struggling, so I paid for her lunch. It made me realize how a small act of kindness can bring such a big smile." Daniel looked at her, genuinely surprised by the sincerity shining in her eyes. "That was incredibly kind of you," he said, his voice warm. Grace simply nodded. I used to think love was about grand gestures and big moments, but maybe it's just about caring. For the first time that day, Daniel felt a real warmth spread through his chest. By the afternoon, Amelia walked in with a gentle smile gracing her features. She wasn't dressed in flashy clothes, but her eyes were full of a quiet, deep peace. "How was your day, Amelia?" Daniel asked, intrigued. She replied, "I visited my family. I haven't seen them in months. I used the card to buy my little brother some new books and a warm coat for the winter." Seeing how happy he was, it made me realize how much I had missed that simple, uncomplicated love. Daniel listened intently, a newfound respect for her growing with every word. "That was a very good use of the day," he said. She smiled back. "Thank you, Daniel. Sometimes love is hidden in the small moments we forget to look for." Her words resonated with him long after she had left the room. As evening fell, Chloe made her entrance, confident and vibrant as always, her phone clutched in her hand. Daniel smiled. "And how did you spend your day, Chloe?" She let out a light laugh. "I made a series of videos about gratitude. I wanted to share some positivity with people online. I also gave out some small gifts to strangers on the street. It felt really good to spread some joy." Daniel nodded politely. "That's very nice, Chloe. I hope you found what makes you happy." She smiled, her eyes bright. "I think happiness grows when you share it with others." After she left, the grand mansion fell quiet once more. Daniel retreated to his study, the day's events swirling in his mind. He sat in his large leather chair, thinking about everything he had heard. Each woman had done something different. Some had chosen kindness, others comfort, and some, it seemed, still sought attention. It was clear that he had learned more about their true hearts in one single day than in all the months he had known them. And yet, something still felt unfinished. A heavy question settled in his heart. In this modern world, was true, selfless love even real anymore? Just then, a soft, hesitant knock broke his train of thought. The door opened slightly, and Ella, his maid, stepped quietly into the room. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir," she said softly. "Would you like your dinner now?" Daniel managed a small smile. "Yes, thank you, Ella." She placed the tray gently on his desk. As she turned to leave, an impulse made Daniel speak. "Tell me something, Ella. What would you have done if I had given you that same card?" She paused at the door, turning back with a shy smile. "I'm not sure, sir. I suppose maybe I'd buy some warm blankets for the people who sleep outside near the station. They always look so cold when I walk home at night." Daniel stared at her, speechless. Her answer was so simple, so natural. There was no performance, no thought of herself, just pure, unprompted kindness. He whispered, his voice barely audible, "That's a beautiful answer, Ella." She smiled gently. "Sometimes happiness is just helping someone else breathe a little easier, sir." With that, she walked out quietly, leaving Daniel lost in his thoughts. He leaned back in his chair, her words echoing in his mind, louder than all the others. He replayed the day, thinking about Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe, their choices, their hearts, their reasons. They had all shown a part of themselves, but none of their actions had touched him the way Ella's few simple words had. In that quiet moment, the truth settled over him with absolute clarity. Love isn't found in who looks the best, spends the most, or gets the most attention. It's found in those who think of others even when no one is watching. He whispered into the stillness of the room. Maybe true love doesn't wear diamonds. Maybe it just wears kindness. As the night grew darker, a feeling Daniel hadn't experienced in years washed over him. Peace. A deep, calming peace. He closed his eyes, waiting for the morning, knowing the test was finally complete. The next morning arrived quietly at the Hayes mansion. Sunlight touched the old stone walls and the sound of birds mixed with the gentle rustle of the trees outside. Inside, Daniel Hayes sat at the long dining table, his mind replaying everything that had happened. He had witnessed kindness, thoughtfulness, and a little bit of pride, yet one voice kept echoing in his thoughts. It was Ella's voice. "Maybe I'd buy blankets for the people who sleep outside near the station." That simple, honest sentence had touched him more than all the grand, calculated gestures he had heard before. A faint smile appeared on Daniel's face. "She didn't even need the card to show love," he whispered to himself. He leaned back in his chair and looked toward the kitchen where Ella was arranging the morning tea. She moved with a quiet, graceful efficiency, never rushing, never complaining. Every action she took was filled with a sense of calm, the kind of tranquility that can only come from a pure and gentle heart. For the very first time, Daniel found himself wanting to know more about her, to see the person she was beyond the polite words and the neat uniform. That day, Daniel decided to create one last, gentle test. This wasn't a trick to catch her out, but a genuine attempt to understand the depths of her heart. He called his manager with a new instruction. "Tomorrow," he said, "tell Ella she has a full day off. Give her a card and say it's a reward from the company. But you must not tell her it's from me." The manager, sensing the importance of the request, agreed without question. Daniel wanted to see what Ella would do when given the same freedom as the others, but without the pressure of knowing she was being watched or tested. He wanted to see her true self. The next morning, Ella was completely surprised. The manager approached her, a small envelope in his hand. "Ella, you've been given a special reward for your hard work," he explained. "Please, take the day off and do whatever makes you happy." She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Really? That's very kind." She carefully opened the envelope and saw a simple card inside. It wasn't flashy, but it held enough money to make anyone's day special. For a brief moment, Ella's mind went to a new coat for herself. Her old one was thin and worn, and the cold bite of winter was just around the corner. But then her gaze shifted to the window. Rain had begun to fall, a steady, dreary drizzle. The image of the people she passed each night near the station flashed in her mind. Some slept under broken, makeshift shelters, trying to shield themselves from the cold with nothing more than torn blankets. Her heart ached for them. In that instant, any thought of a new coat vanished. So, instead of heading to the mall, Ella walked to a small local store. With the money from the card, she bought thick, warm blankets, some non-perishable food, and a few thermos bottles to fill with hot tea. The bags were heavy, but she carried them herself, her steps purposeful. At the station, she moved quietly from person to person, handing each one a blanket, a cup of hot tea, and a small, genuine smile. There were no cameras, no grand announcements, just pure, simple kindness flowing from her heart. When one old man, his hands trembling as he took the warm cup, looked up at her and said, "Bless you, child." Ella felt tears well up in her eyes. She didn't have much herself, but the feeling that filled her heart in that moment was worth more than anything she could ever buy. What Ella didn't know was that Daniel had asked his driver to follow her, from a safe distance. It wasn't to invade her privacy, but simply to ensure she was safe throughout her day. When the driver returned that evening, he went straight to Daniel's study. His voice was quiet, filled with a certain reverence. "Sir," he began, "she didn't buy anything for herself. Not a single thing. She spent everything on others, food and blankets for the people sleeping on the streets." Daniel's eyes softened as he listened. He didn't say a word for a long time. He just sat still, his gaze fixed on the floor, feeling his heart swell with an unfamiliar emotion. Finally, he whispered, so softly the driver almost didn't hear. "She gave away warmth while wearing an old coat herself." It was the first time in years that Daniel had felt his chest tighten, not from pride or from pain, but from something gentle and profoundly real. That night, Ella returned to the mansion, tired but with a deep sense of peace. Daniel was sitting by the fireplace pretending to read a book. When she entered the room to tidy up, He looked up and offered her a kind smile. "Did you enjoy your day off, Ella?" he asked, his tone casual. She nodded, a small, genuine smile on her face. "Yes, sir. It was a very good day." "What did you do?" he asked, feigning simple curiosity. "Oh, nothing much," she said shyly, not wanting to draw attention to her actions. "I just went out for a bit and met a few people. It felt nice to share a bit of warmth with them. Sometimes a small thing can make a big difference." Daniel's heart melted at her beautiful simplicity. He smiled warmly. "That's a truly wonderful way to spend a day." A light blush colored her cheeks. "Thank you, sir. I just did what felt right." He wanted so badly to tell her the truth, that the card was from him, that it was all a test, and that she had passed more beautifully than he could have ever imagined. But something stopped him. He wanted her to stay exactly as she was, pure, humble, and completely unaware of the quiet grace she carried. After she left the room, Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. The city lights twinkled like tiny stars scattered across the dark earth. He whispered to himself, "I gave cards to 4 women and saw many different choices. But the one who never asked for anything, she was the one who gave the most." He finally realized that true love isn't loud or decorated with fancy things. It doesn't demand attention or compete for status. It simply, quietly, gives. In that moment, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of admiration mixed with a deep, calming peace. He finally understood that love can be found in the quietest hearts, in the softest smiles, and in people who expect absolutely nothing in return. A faint smile touched his lips as he said to himself, "Sometimes, the richest person in the world is the one who gives without ever counting the cost." The fireplace crackled gently, and the night wind brushed softly against the windows. For the first time in a long time, the grand, cold mansion felt warm, filled with meaning. Tomorrow, Daniel knew, the morning sun crept slowly across the grand mansion, painting soft, golden lines on the polished floors. For the first time in years, Daniel Hayes woke up feeling light. No rush, no meetings, no noise, just a quiet calm that wrapped around his heart like gentle music. He sat by the window sipping tea, lost in thought. The faces of the 4 women came to mind again. Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe. Each was kind in their own way, each with their own story. But one face stayed longer than the rest. Ella. Her smile, her calm voice, her small, kind acts, they had left an imprint no wealth could ever match. Daniel whispered to himself, "I thought I was testing them, but maybe life was testing me." That afternoon, Daniel called all 4 women back to the mansion. They entered the grand hall, dressed elegantly, their faces a mix of curiosity and expectation. He greeted them politely. "Thank you all for joining me again. I wanted to tell you what I've learned." The room grew quiet. Daniel looked at them one by one. "Each of you showed a different kind of heart. Olivia, you brought beauty. Grace, you showed kindness. Amelia, you gave to family. And Chloe, you shared positivity. I respect all of that." They smiled proudly, their confidence growing. "But," Daniel continued softly, his tone shifting, "there was one person who reminded me what love truly means. Someone who didn't even know she was being tested." The women exchanged confused glances. He turned his gaze toward the doorway. "Ella," he called out, "could you come in, please?" The grand doors opened slowly. Ella, wearing her simple uniform, stepped in shyly, looking surprised to see everyone there. "Sir?" she asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel smiled warmly. "Please, come closer, Ella. There's something I want to say in front of everyone." She hesitated, then walked forward, her hands folded politely in front of her. Daniel took a slow breath. "Yesterday, you were given a day off with a gift card. You thought it came from the company, but it was from me. Ella's eyes widened in shock. "From you, sir?" He nodded. "Yes, it was a small test, the same kind I gave to these 4 women. But unlike them, you didn't spend a single penny on yourself. You chose to help people who had nothing. You gave warmth to strangers while you had so little." The room fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Olivia, Grace, Amelia, and Chloe looked at each other in quiet shock, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on them. Daniel's voice softened as he said, "That, Ella, is what true love looks like. Quiet, selfless, and real." Tears began to well up in Ella's eyes. "I didn't do anything special, sir," she said, her voice trembling. I did what felt right. I've seen those people every night on my way home, and I couldn't just ignore them." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly why it's special. You didn't do it for a reward or for attention. You did it because your heart guided you." He paused, then stood up from his chair. "You reminded me that love isn't about what we can buy. It's about what we can give without expecting anything in return." Tears now shone in Ella's eyes, and her hands trembled slightly. She had never been praised like this before, not for her work, not for her kindness, and certainly not for her heart. Daniel walked closer to her, his tone gentle and warm. "Ella," he said softly, "for years I surrounded myself with people who smiled for my money, not for me. But you smiled even when I had nothing to offer. You spoke kindly when no one was listening. You taught me more about love in one day than I've learned in my entire life." Ella looked down, overwhelmed and unsure what to say. "Sir, I'm just your maid," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No, Ella, you're the only person who saw me as a man, not just a title." He took a slow breath. "If you'll let me, I want to start again. Not as your employer, but as someone who wants to know you. Truly know you." The hall stayed perfectly still, the air soft with emotion. Ella looked up, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and warmth. "Sir, I don't know what to say," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "Just say what your heart feels." She took a quiet breath. "All I ever wanted was to do good where I could. I never thought anyone, especially you, would notice. But if kindness made you see me, then I'm glad." Daniel's eyes softened. "Then that's enough for me." The other 4 women stood silently, finally understanding that the test was never about wealth or status. One by one, they offered respectful smiles and quietly left the hall, knowing their story had ended not with loss, but with a profound understanding. After they were gone, Daniel turned back to Ella. "You've shown me the kind of heart I want to walk beside. Not someone who shines under bright lights, but someone who lights up the world quietly." Ella blushed, tears of happiness now rolling down her cheeks. "I don't know if I deserve such words." Daniel smiled. "You do. Because true love doesn't belong to the richest. It belongs to the real." Weeks passed. The mansion, once cold and echoing, now felt warm and alive. Ella continued her work, but everything was different. Daniel spent more time talking with her, about books, music, life, and dreams. They laughed together. They shared tea in the garden. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, letting peace speak for them. Love didn't arrive like a storm. It bloomed quietly, like spring after a long, hard winter. One evening, Daniel and Ella stood near the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and pink. The air was soft and calm. Daniel turned to her. "Do you know what I've realized, Ella?" She looked up, a gentle smile on her face. "What's that, sir?" He replied, "That the richest moment of my life was when I saw you give everything you had without asking for anything in return." Ella smiled shyly. "And mine was when someone finally saw me for who I really am." They both smiled, standing in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. In that quiet moment, the billionaire who once tested love finally found it. Not in wealth, not in beauty, but in a heart that gave without reason. The story ended not with luxury, but with warmth. Because in the end, true love doesn't ask for anything. It simply gives, quietly and endlessly. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more content that makes you think and feel. See you in the next one.